Today, we want to talk about something a little bit different.
Right.
We want to talk about boundary setting. And I just have to credit my partner here. I really didn't know what a boundary was before I started working with Kelley 5 years ago. And I understand now the importance of them in personal life, but also in the workplace. So let's just start out by you explaining what a boundary is.
Right. Just demystifying, right? Well, number one, I just think that we are not natural boundary setters because it doesn't feel good. But what a boundary actually does, we feel like when we set a boundary with someone, it's like we're telling them to stay away.
Right.
That's not the case. You're actually saying, here is what is okay for me. Here's what's not okay for me. And it allows you to be in healthy relationship with people. Where relationships get toxic is when there are no boundaries and nobody is really communicating, this is what's okay for me and this is what's not okay for me.
I like that though. That's a really easy way to even present it, right?
Right.
Great.
So when you think about setting a boundary, it's thinking about it in that context.
Right.
Here's what's okay for me and here's what's not okay for me. So if something's going on in your work environment and, you kind of are having that internal conversation, stop yourself and ask yourself that question. What's okay for me here and what is not okay for me here?
Right. Good.
Okay.
And so then when and how do you communicate that? Let's use that example. I'm at work and I'm constantly being asked at 4:45 to take on it's not just a little task like go turn off the lights. It's something. Can you read this report and analyze it for me? And that's not okay because I'm looking for a normal work day. We agreed to like a 9 to 5 and that kind of work might take me here till 6:30.
Right.
How do I have that conversation?
So that the telltale sign for yourself is actually something that you feel viscerally.
Okay.
So if you're starting to feel that like angsty, resentful, frustrated feeling,
We've all felt that. Yeah.
That means that a boundary needs to be set here and there's not one that needs to be set. Now, in that particular scenario, when we go to the next bullet, I think it'll be really good to sort of walk through the questions that I have for that. But know that the very, very beginnings of it start with that angsty, why do I always feel like triggered by this? This is something that like triggers me. A good question to ask yourself in that moment is, what's okay for me and what's not okay for me? What's not okay.
And then the distinction is if you've already done that,
right?
And then the boundary isn't being honored, how do you have that conversation?
Exactly. And you always want to make sure that you really have set a boundary. And that
because you might have said it in your head.
Absolutely.
But if you haven't really communicated it and got their buy-in.
Yes. Or when it gets hard and difficult to hold that boundary, you say, oh, you know what? I can just do this. Happens at home a lot, especially when people are working. It's like, oh my gosh,
easier to do it myself.
Exactly. I wanted the dishwasher unloaded, but you know what? It's not done. And it will take me 2 seconds to do it. And then I will feel better. If you are setting the boundary that you are no longer unloading that dishwasher, something that simple, you have to hold that boundary. And whoever is accountable for doing that has to be the person that you have that difficult conversation.
And that can happen at work too, though, especially if you're a new employee. You might go in all, guns a-blazing and here are my requirements and you're agreeing you're doing everything right.
Yes.
But very often they'll, and some managers, even in a kind of just a domination role, will try to push it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you're feeling like, well, I can't really say anything. I'm a new employee and I want to be a pain. Just do it.
Yeah. And it's that pleaser comes out. And then all of a sudden the pleaser's running you. The pleaser is a huge.
We could do another YouTube on that.
We should. But the pleaser is a huge boundaryless way of being. It's a mindset that you can use. Yeah.
So in some ways, we can contribute to that situation of that boundaryless or the not honored boundary by doing what you did. And so in what ways can we make the situation healthier? Let's stick with one of the examples. I'm at work. I've already set the boundary.
Yep.
They're still dumping work on my desk at 4:45.
Right.
How do I revisit that?
Okay. So you have to first ask yourself, have I set a good boundary?
Right.
Have I actually really set a good boundary here? So you're saying, yes, I did. I set a good boundary.
I tried.
Yeah, I said it. Okay. And then the next question you need to ask yourself is, how's it going? Well, it's not going well, right? Because you're still doing the same thing over and over again. And so our natural default is to go to blame.
Okay.
Right? Our natural default is to say, well, they're just throwing it at me.
Right.
But here, I'm going to teach you something a little different. I want you to ask yourself how you're contributing to it.
Okay.
Did you just say, you know what, fine, I'll just take it.
Mhm.
Did you not say anything at all? Did you, when the work got dumped on your desk, did you just say nothing to anybody else, to anybody about
Right.
it?
And
So,
it can even
yeah,
become
answer
like
that
kind of
question.
passive aggressive.
Yes.
So
Yes.
in this, my
It's
scenario,
always passive aggressive when it's that sort
Yeah.
of like, okay, I
Yep.
didn't say anything, but I am like in my brain, I am feeling that angsty, like resentful feeling. That is that.
So in my scenario, yes to setting the boundary, yes to contributing to the situation, if I'm really honest,
Okay.
because I'm just pleasing, I'm taking the work on.
Yes. Yeah.
But just to your point, I'm also really resentful.
Yes.
And that's not healthy.
Yes. And it's not healthy for the work environment.
Yeah.
And here's another thing that we do. Then we go find somebody who's feeling the same kind of resentment. And then we compile with them. And guess what happens to the problem? It grows. Guess what happens to your stress level? It increases.
Right.
Because you are just feeding the beast.
Right.
You're feeding the beast. So you have to have these difficult conversations. You set a boundary, the boundary is not being held. And so you want to clearly communicate to the person that is, bringing this work onto you in a way that you're going to be seen and heard. And so something like this in the work environment, I would say set up an actual
Definitely
meeting. Set up a
don't
meeting.
do it on the fly.
No, you don't want to do it on the fly. And you don't want to do it when you're in this state.
In the heat of the moment, for sure.
You don't want to do it when you're there. You want to be very thoughtful about the conversation that you're going to have. And the biggest and most important factor in that conversation is that there's trust in that when you walk into that room. And so you might want to just set it up sort of like front loading it delicately. I get it. Like if you're talking to your manager, I get it. I know what season we're in right now. This is like, we are all like in it right now. But what has happened is I've become the place where all of the extra keeps getting dumped, and I'm really not meeting my targets. I'm really not meeting my deadlines. And so we've talked about this before, and I really set a hard boundary. I set a boundary around it. I have to just reinforce that boundary because it's not happening. And what's happening is our bottom line is going to be impacted by that because I'm not meeting the targets that I need to meet.
I think it's also really helpful in that situation, having been on the manager side for a long time, is for the person to come in and say, Kelley, I think everything you just said, all that stuff, but also maybe throwing in a little bit of, I'm a little at fault here.
Right.
I shouldn't have accepted it. And it's sometimes hard for me not to accept work because I'm really in it with you and I want us to succeed, but we're not going to succeed if I'm going home frazzled and coming into work, really feeling frustrated because I know there's going to be more than I can do.
And what that does, so those two sort of elements of, I get it, I understand this is hard and difficult for you, and here is where I am culpable in this.
Yeah.
What that does is it creates trust.
Yeah.
And that's all you can discuss anything when you are in a situation where there is trust.
Right.
And leading with that, I get where you're at for another human being. I don't care if it is in the work environment or at home
or a parent
at the supermarket.
Or a child.
Exactly. Yeah. It could be anywhere. If you lead with empathy, I get it. I understand it. I see where you're at and I'm with you on that. It just disarms the person. It's called front loading gently. That's essentially what it is. And then you're able to have more of a conversation that really can be.
This was really helpful. I could think of someone in my personal life right now that I could do this with. So
front loaded gently.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please click below and join our subscribe to our channel. We have new content every week. So you can visit our website, www.preparetoLaunchU.com for more. We'll see you next time.